Saints. Then last, it didn't make the bulletin, but we have been praying as a congregation along with Joyce DeYoung and family as she and they came around her mother, beloved mother, grandmother, friend of many. The Lord called her home and called another saint into the glory of Christ last night. And so we want to remember Joyce, the family and those with them, as there is much grief for the loss of such a treasure on this earth, but a great hope that is shared that our loss here is her far greater gain and glory. With those announcements, please join me in turning in our hymnal to number 151, and let's lift our voice in praise to our God. Our opening song for this morning, Lord of the Sabbath, hear us pray. Father, we join with Joyce and the family and grieving the loss of such a dear mother, grandmother, and friend. Lord, how sweet to hear from her own lips the wondrous truths of Christ and the gospel, a testimony of your great faithfulness even through the valley of the shadow of death, a deep sense of assurance that goodness and mercy, your goodness and your mercy, have pursued her all the days of life. And now, Lord, while the loss still feels very real and raw, may that grief be given over to the great and living hope that is hers and ours with Jesus Christ in the heavenly places. Father, we bring well, what we find is that Christ comes into our lives, and with divine sovereign authority, He changes our minds. He comes into our lives, and with divine sovereign authority, He changes our hearts. He changes our priorities. He changes our life. Oh, we can see examples of this in the life of Peter, the life of Paul. We can see examples of this in the stories of the saints. We heard from Augustine. You have a story. You all have a story. From the perspective of the world, not much has changed. School continues, work goes on, marriage is still shared, parenting. Oh, but everything has changed. I had the privilege of talking to Joyce's grandmother for a little bit. And here she was at that old season of life, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And all she could do was talk, a running stream of the sweet things she'd come to know of Jesus. I'd start to read a Bible passage and she'd finish it for me. I'd start to quote a hymn and she'd sing it. I read from Revelation chapter 20 and the streams of living water that flow through the holy city. And I finished and she looked at me and she said, I remember it in a different version. The things of Christ came to dwell deep within her soul. It doesn't happen all at once, does it? Even the incredible change that took place from the life of the Apostle Paul. Yes, some things of the darkness are immediately gone. And then there's this long journey of being transformed through suffering and sanctification from one glory to another until that final glory is finally received.